Good morning. Welcome to this simple space. Hope you guys have had a great week, and I hope you had a great Labor Day last weekend. We kind of took a week off, kind of got busy with family, and just took a little space there. But today I wanted to come back with you and just spend a few moments encouraging you. And I wanted just to share something that I've been kind of pondering myself lately, and that is life attracting life. And I am sitting in front of one of my gardens. As you know, as you probably have known by now, gardens are a big thing for me, and it's a simple space that I really enjoy, that I get to be quiet with God in. And so I have a few different places that I sit each day, and all of them have flowers, and this year they have just been extraordinarily bold and gorgeous. And I was sitting thinking about how that kind of came to be, and it just began to create more and more of a lesson for me in my own brain. So I hope that this will give you some insight today. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel as you're watching. Just click that bell too, and that's going to give you notifications of when we have something uploaded. And if I ever share something that you feel like this is really something that I have a friend who needs to hear this, please share. We want to share this together. We want to pollinate each other with the things that we talk about and unpack together, and leave some comments. Leave those comments, please, because that's how we grow together, is by each of us uniquely sharing the different angles and insights and perspective that God gives us as we talk about things. So today I want to talk about bees in my garden. And not the letter B, but the bees that pollinate. And I want to share with you something that I feel like God has given me as a principle in my own life, that life attracts life. And that when you have something in your life that you really have a strong desire for, something that you feel like even that God is calling you to do, one of the things He's showing me is that when I try to pursue that, in the years past when I pursued it and I've tried to make it happen, I've tried to do the things that I thought I should do to make it happen, it would always elude me. It was always just be out there within reach, but not in my possession. And what He began to show me through what I'm going to share with you today is that when I instead sit still and just begin to create the environment that He begins to flow through me, it actually then attracts the very thing that I've been desiring. So a couple of years ago, I was sitting in the garden one summer, and I noticed that there wasn't any bees at all. And I'm in Oklahoma. We've always had bees. I remember growing up as a kid, you couldn't walk through a clover path barefoot because you'd probably get stung. And they were just always everywhere. And in the recent years, we kind of had a bee depopulation. I don't know if that's the right word, but they just disappeared. And it was kind of a vague thought in my head, like, wow, that's kind of weird. And then at that same time, within about a month or two, we were in Florida with some friends and had an opportunity to sit with a gentleman who wrote a book called Discover Your Sweet Spot, Mr. Scott Fay, and it's an incredible book. I would highly recommend that you read it. But it's a landscaping metaphor, which totally appealed to me. But as I was sitting with him in the Gorman's living room, we were having a conversation about this, and he made this comment. And I thought this was so good because I was thinking about this already because there were no bees in my garden. When you create an environment conducive to what you desire, it will attract. When you pursue your desire, it eludes. And I thought how appropriate that statement was, because in the natural garden state, if I were to try to create or manufacture something that would put the bees in my garden, I could have probably went out and put a beehive right in the middle of my garden. I could have maybe, I don't know if you can buy bees and introduce them to your garden, I don't know. But instead what happened was I had as a gardener, began to plant things on purpose that I knew attracted bees and butterflies and hummingbirds. Now the first year that I planted those, nothing happened, right? The next year, which would have been last year, at first, the flowers came up, still didn't really see any bees or butterflies, but I continued to cultivate that because I had researched and understood and enjoyed just the beauty of what that environment looked like for me, right? Just sitting in that garden, I just felt empowered. My garden was doing well. One day, I'm sitting in my chair and I'm in the middle of studying and meditating and spending time with God, and I just kept having all this buzzing around my head, and I was just kind of subconsciously doing this and swatting at it. In my head, it was just a fly. And I finally thought, what the heck is this? And I look up, and I kid you not, there are probably a dozen bees swarming right here behind me. And I just stopped, and I just sat there, and I thought, God, wow, this is amazing. The bees have arrived. The environment that I had planted, the environment that I had cultivated out of a desire and out of something that was something that I would thrive in, that I loved, the part of me that God had placed inside of me that just wants to create gardens, had actually attracted the very thing that was missing for several years. Can you see that beautiful picture? So I want to step into that a little bit today with that in your head about when you plant environments. I hope you can see this behind me. There might even be a massive amount of bees during this. I don't know, it's pretty early, but when you plant the thing that attracts the pollinators, they're going to come. And I can't tell you this year, as I said in my garden, how many beautiful butterflies, bees, hummingbirds. I don't even have a hummingbird feeder. My gardens this year have been thriving with life. And that's the point I want to get to you today, that life attracts life. When I create an environment of life, it attracts life. When I speak words of life spiritually, when I create a spiritual garden, if you will, of life, it's going to attract life from me. Even in the midst of situations in the world, even in chaos, even in a dry and desolate part of your life, we all have those. That's part of life. Even in that, when I begin to speak life, it's going to attract life. One of the scriptures that I love and I'm going to read to you is Isaiah 43:19. It says, "Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it will spring forth. I will even make a road in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." Creating a garden is what God did here out of a blank landscape that attracted life. Think about the Garden of Eden. He created Eden and he put Adam in it, and then he told Adam, now take this garden and multiply it, spread it throughout the whole earth. I believe, I'm not sure, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a theologian, but I'm pretty sure that the understanding is that God created the Garden of Eden, but the whole earth was not a garden. It was chaos, it was desolate, and it was a desert. And he created Adam to then be able to create that from what he gave him. So think about this way. You are a garden that God has created with your unique design. That design is going to give you the ability to expand with your purpose, God's purpose on this earth. Creating creates change. Something new, something improved, or something enlarged. I want you to write that down. You are designed to create, but creating creates change. Don't be afraid of change. Speak life by speaking change into your life. And understand that when you're up against a change, that is a sign of life, and that is a sign of creativity, and that's a good thing. You might be in a desert landscape right now, but God gives you the power in your mouth and in his word that's inside of you. It's not you just talking, it's you speaking his word that creates life. So when you create that environment that's conducive to what you desire, if you have a desert and you're wanting an oasis, let's just use those analogies. I mean, the Bible's full of them. Begin to speak that. Speak forth what it is that you desire, what God's planted in your heart, all right? For me, this whole thing about the bees and the butterflies in my gardens, it just created a picture of how to walk this out, because pursuing to capture and contain rarely is successful, and many times it's painful, right? But when I become intentional about focus on planting and cultivating an environment, I then can have a landscape that's full of beauty. So my question became this: what environment do I thrive in? And what is that environment welcome? So that would be a bullet point for you today. Begin to ask yourself, what environment do you thrive in? Do you thrive in a peaceful, quiet environment? Do you thrive in an energetic business environment? Do you thrive in a powerful worldwide ministry type environment? What is the environment that gives you life? Because that's an indicator of what it is that God wants you to produce for life for somebody else. And then what is that environment welcome? It's important that you understand that, because if I had planted a bunch of pine trees because that's the environment that I loved, that was going to attract and welcome a different animal or species or pollinator than the bees and the butterflies that I was seeking, right? So this becomes a building block for you. When you begin to understand how you thrive and what that welcomes, then you can begin to build this. This is a building platform for you. My perspective and the opportunities that I attract are directly connected to my attitude and my willingness to embrace change as a product of my creativity. So as you create, there's going to be change. What is your attitude towards change? As we grow older, we tend to get really resistant to change, and that's something I want you to walk away from and rethink that. Embrace change, because embracing change is actually a product of your creativity, and that's how God made you. If you're not embracing change, you're not allowing yourself to create. We are each uniquely designed to create, not to pursue fruit-bearing and life-sustaining environments, gardens, if you will, in the context of what we're talking about. What I steward or cultivate with intention results in an environment that's going to attract what God's designed for me. So creating requires awareness, it requires observation, consideration, and action. So as we unpack this in the weeks ahead, I want you to think about that. And I want you to be okay with that and to sit with me in a season of change and in a garden that's going to create and attract what you desire. So, as an environment that sustains and populates purpose, you're going to have to be consistent, you're going to have to be protected and well maintained. So those three things. A garden that is going to be cultivated for what you desire. Now again, we're using analogies here. I'm talking about a physical garden, but I also want you to think about this as the garden that God wants you to perpetuate and expand on this earth while you're here. The three things that are going to be necessary for that: consistent, protected, and well maintained. All right? It's not hard, but here's another scripture for you. I want you to meditate. That's a new word. Ponder and meditate. Proverbs 24:30 through 34 in the Passion Translation. One day I passed by the field or garden of a lazy man, and I noticed the vineyards of a slacker. I observed nothing but thorns and broken down walls. I pondered the lessons. I considered their lack of wisdom. Here's what I learned from this. It says, professional work habits prevent poverty from becoming your permanent business partner. And if you put off until tomorrow the work you could do today, tomorrow never seems to come. Wow. Right there, I've been sitting in this passage for a while now. I've been leading up to this. This has been my simple space recently, was as God began to show me that if I want to sustain and populate the purpose that He has given me to create. I'm hearing a bee right behind me right now, actually. There he is. There are 4 things that I want to concentrate on as I look around the environment that I'm thriving in. I want to be consistent with it. I want to protect it, and I want it to be well maintained. So in this passage of Proverbs, he noticed the vineyards of a slacker. He was aware. As you look around in your day, as you see things in your own life, become aware of where things are maybe out of balance. Become aware of where things are a little bit desolate. It's okay to be aware of something that's not right in your life or something that's negative in your life. It's very important to be aware of that. What is crucial is to not live in that space. You begin to observe why it was like that. He says that he noticed it was the vineyard of a slacker. He noticed and he observed that it was broken down and full of weeds. Why? Because he didn't consistently maintain his garden, did he? I know a lot of people that love my gardens, and I've tried to help them develop this in their own life physically. And what it comes down to is when the rubber meets the road, nobody wants to take the time to pull the weeds, to deadhead the flowers, and to water consistently, and to protect the borders. Think about how relevant that is to your spiritual life. You've got to be willing to pull the weeds when they come up. You've got to be consistent in protecting the borders of your garden. I had an armadillo try to tear mine up about a week or so ago. I had to go in there and protect that. I had to figure out, what can I do to protect my garden from being destroyed by an invader? You've got to figure out those things spiritually in your life, how to protect what God has called you to do. All right? So many times we want something, but we don't want to change what we're doing today. So if you put off until tomorrow what you could do today, you're never going to see tomorrow. You're never going to see anything change in your life. If you continue to put off the simple things that you could do today, that is something that we, even in life, hear all the time, don't we? Well, you know, if you put off till tomorrow, you won't get it. It's like we hear that as a proverb in so many things, but it's so relevant. Just to do today what you can to be consistent in protecting and maintaining the gardens that God is asking you to create. The more I invest into my garden, the more life it attracts. When I invested my time and my research and my thought into the garden physically, and it began to attract those bees, do you know, it wasn't too long after that the butterflies came in. Do you know why? Because as the bees pollinated, the flowers exploded. The flowers became more and more conducive for the butterflies. And then the butterflies came. And I'm not talking about some plain moss. I'm talking about beautiful blue butterflies that we rarely see in Oklahoma. It's because they're pollinators. And here's the really cool thing about all of this. What I do today that creates a sustainable garden for tomorrow not only is for me. Your purpose is not about you. That produces, gosh, how can I say this? Those bees, the things that you do that produce pollen in your garden that will attract other people to you, they become the pollinators that spread the purpose that God has given to you, that spread His love, that spread His kingdom, and that is what He's about. Our purpose is not to sit in one spot. We may sit and create, but in creating, that life attracts life that then pollinates and spreads, that we don't have to go do that. We're not trying to figure out how to get out to millions of people the thing that God has put in our heart. No, no, no. You sit and thrive in the environment that God has given you. You work on that purpose and you cultivate your garden. God's going to create life that attracts to you, the people that you need, the network that He needs you to be connected to. That's going to populate and push that forward into all the earth. And that's a beautiful thing. So today, what I want to ask you to do in your simple space with God this week, in the context and thinking about all this, I want to ask you to ask yourself 2 questions. Write this down. What is the place of my fruitfulness? What environment do I thrive in? Write that down and think about it. Are you like me? When somebody asks you a question like that, do you think, I hate to read a book and at the end of the chapter they have questions and I have to try to figure out how to answer those questions? This isn't that. This is just something that if you're really, truly passionate, if you find yourself saying these words, I just seem to everything I touch doesn't turn to gold, it turns to dust and desert, all right? Let's turn that around. What is a place of your fruitfulness? What does that look like for you? How can you change that in your life? Where do you thrive? Begin to speak that. Instead of just sitting in the desert that you're in, begin to think about in your mind, because that's how God made you. Close your eyes in your simple space with God and say, what does my garden look like? Begin to picture that. Begin to speak it. And then what is God calling you to steward? Excuse me. What is that environment welcome? Because it's not just about you. And be patient as you do this. Be consistent to protect and maintain this, because you know what? One day you're going to be in your garden and you're going to notice that the bees and the butterflies have arrived. And when that happens, both naturally and spiritually, it's going to be an amazing day for you, because you're going to understand the process has occurred for you. Have a great week, and I hope that you enjoy your garden.